Hey everybody, welcome to BSc 219 Genetics. Okay, what is genetics? Now, classically, genetics is defined as the study of heredity. And what do we mean by that? Well, essentially, what we want to know is how, when parents have or produce offspring, why do those offspring often look a lot like their parents? So clearly the parents are transmitting some information to the offspring that causes the offspring to resemble the parents. Like squirrels, if they have offspring, the offspring look like squirrels. There are squirrels. And even at a smaller level, in humans, human offspring generally just overall resemble or have the features of their parents. So when we talk about genetics as the study of heredity, what we are, really interested in is, these instructions that are transmitted from parents to offspring. So what are these instructions? We now know the instructions essentially are telling cells of the organisms how to divide, how to produce proteins, how to, form the organism and allow the organism to produce more offspring. So, what we're going to focus on in this course is, how is this information transmitted to offspring? How is this information interpreted? And as we move towards the later sections or classes of the course, how can scientists, change the information? So how is the info altered? Let's say if a scientist wants to make a genetically modified organism, how does the scientist alter the genetic information? And in nature, how do mutations alter this information and lead to changes in organisms or evolution? So genetics can be divided into a number of different subdisciplines. I should spell it correctly, huh? Genetics. So a number of different subdisciplines. So we can have classical genetics, molecular genetics, and population genetics are just three of the possible or subdisciplines of genetics. Now, population genetics, now this is, how information is, works, or genetic information works at the population level. And we will spend at least one class talking about population genetics, but we have a course called Evolution here at Illinois State University that really focuses on population genetics. And I encourage you to take that course. I believe it's a 300 level course. We are going to spend most of the semester talking about classical genetics and molecular genetics. Now, classical genetics is essentially what was really the main focus of genetics in the late 18th, early 19th century. So before 1950. So pre-1950. And these are going to be scientists like Gregor Mendel and Thomas Morgan. And by focusing on classical genetics, you can really understand all the basic fundamentals of genetics. And many of the techniques in classical genetics are still used in genetic laboratories today. So it's very important to cover classical genetics. Now, after 1950, about the time that the structure of DNA was discovered, well, that's when molecular genetics really takes off. And what is molecular genetics? So when we talk about molecular genetics, what we're talking about is, say, the structure of DNA and the structure of RNA and how RNA is used to make proteins. And today we are learning, it seems like every year we learn about a new type of RNA molecule that is found in cells. And when we get to the molecular genetics section of the course, we're going to learn a lot about these different types of molecules. So, what are we going to talk about today? So today we are going to focus on mitosis. Now, mitosis is a process that I'm sure you have had in high school and in our introductory biology classes here at ISU. Essentially, let's say if this is a nucleus. Now, a nucleus is that compartment in cells of eukaryotes that holds the nuclear DNA. Now, it's the job of mitosis to take that nucleus and make two genetically identical nuclei. And sometimes we call these nuclei daughter nuclei, and we'll call this one over here the parent nucleus. But the goal of mitosis is to take that nucleus and make two genetically identical nuclei from that nucleus. And now, when a geneticist says genetically identical, the geneticist means that the DNA sequence, the sequence of the DNA between, let's say, these two nuclei right here, the sequence is identical. And that's what we mean when we say genetically identical. The DNA sequence is identical. And so if mitosis does what it is supposed to do, the DNA in this nucleus here should be identical to the DNA in that nucleus down there, and both of these should have identical DNA sequences to the parent nucleus. So that's what we're going to focus on today. We will focus on mitosis, a little bit about cell biology at the very start, and by the end you should have a really good understanding of mitosis. And the next class we will talk about meiosis, and then we'll get straight into classical genetics next week. Okay, so let's start.